All right, so we'll just start. So good afternoon, everyone. Yeah, so today we'll be discussing some our live Zooms with the ASEAN Foundations, and we have 3 speakers today to talk about the topic on COVID-19 and circular economy. So my name is Mahmudi Yusbi. So I am a program manager at the ASEAN Foundations who oversee the program of the ASEAN Foundations at the ASEAN region. Today, I will be moderating these online discussions that aims to address these transitions to sustainable, consumption and support less plastic economy. Part of the ASEAN Foundation's Model ASEAN meeting, so to help the ASEAN youth to understand the themes of this year's Model ASEAN meeting in Hanoi, Vietnam, so we are organizing these online discussions. When we talk about the COVID-19 and circular economy, I believe with the increased cases around ASEAN and the world, I think it has a growing impact on several aspects. For instance, in medical industry, plastic is still the most reliable and affordable solution for personal protection and healthcare system, and single use of plastic perform a vital role in the medical industry by preventing the spread of the virus. And these conditions has given an influence to the environment. I've just mentioned one aspect, but yet there are many other aspects too. To cope with the issues, I think we should involve the circular economy in the production process to eliminate the waste and address the continual processes. The circular economy will allow us to collectively reimagine and redesign our world. To answer the above issues, we have 3 experts today who will be speaking and shed light on the topic on COVID-19 as the circular economy, transition to sustainable consumption and less plastic economy. Without further ado, I would like to introduce the first speakers of our online discussions today. So we have the first speakers here, Dr. Arisman. So let me brief a little bit about Dr. Arisman's profile. So he has a 20 years experience in teaching and research supervision position in 2 public universities in Indonesia, including faculty member at the Department of Development Economy, Faculty of Economic and Business, the State Islamic Universities in Jakarta, and adjunct lecturer at the Universities of Indonesia. He is also the visiting lecturer at Prince Songkla University in Thailand and Western Sydney University, Australia, and the Chinese University of Hong Kong. Dr. Arisman has been involved in various research projects and consultancies in ASEAN and the United Nations. Currently, he is the Executive Director of Center for Southeast ASEAN Studies, or CSEAS Indonesia. His current research project include plastic waste management and circular economy in municipalities across Indonesia, marine environmental issues in ASEAN, and plastic pollution in ASEAN. So without further ado, so Dr. Arisman, so floor is yours to present the topics for today.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry. Thank you, Mahmudi, and also Dr. Yang, Executive Director of ASEAN Foundation. I would like to start my presentation by, sorry. Yeah, as we know that UN, United Nations, declared that plastic pollution is one of the global crises. So related to the current condition, the COVID-19 pandemic, this is also forced us to rethinking this current problem, especially the plastic problem. So as we know also, after this pandemic, we move to we call it the new normal. So one of the approach is circular economy. It allow us to collective the redesign our world. So we can reflect what kind of world after the pandemic. Yeah. So yeah, I would like to share that in Southeast Asia, especially in ASEAN countries, related to the rapid urbanization and increasing of the consumerism. So this is, as we know, that the trend of plastic consumption is increasing due to the consumerism, this the behavior, consumer behavior. Based on the data, there's an increasing of trend of plastic consumption, especially of the plastic packaging. Is almost 40 or 50% increasing. There's also a positive correlation between the GDP growth and the plastic consumption in the region. So if we look at several countries here, there's 5 countries in Southeast Asia. There's Indonesia, Malaysia, Thailand, Vietnam. So this is also the relation between the income per capita increase and then the plastic consumption. So what is the meaning of this condition? So it means we are over consume of the plastic related to the, we call it the plastic economy. Even there's more industry using the plastic for their packaging, including the health industry, consumer goods. So now there's a discussion in the
Arisman. So Dr. Arisman, have you shared your screens with the audience?
Oh, not yet, yeah.
Not yet, yeah. So perhaps you can share your screens and talk through the. Yeah.
Okay. Let me. Sorry.
Yeah. Okay.
Just a second. Just a second. Okay. Sorry, it's very technical. I already shared my screen. Okay. Yeah, I continue my presentation. Yeah, the trend in plastic consumption, like I mentioned before, is an increasing trend of plastic consumption, especially the plastic packaging is almost 40 until 50%. And also there's a positive correlation between GDP growth and the plastic consumption in the region. If we look at 5 ASEAN countries in the statistic, including Indonesia, Malaysia, Thailand, and Vietnam, sorry, 4. So there's a positive correlation. Yeah. Yeah, the plastic economy, what does it mean of plastic economy? All the economics activities using plastic, like I mentioned, about the consumer goods as a packaging, or also another sectors like health sectors. Usually, the concept is, we call it a linear concept. Now we want to transform to, we call it circular. What is the linear? The consumers take the product, make and dispose the product, become waste. Now, how to minimize the waste? So this is related to the concept of circular economy and SDGs, especially the 5 SDGs, SDG 6, 11, 12, 14, and 15, which is relevant to reducing the input and the impact of plastic waste to the terrestrial and the marine ecosystem. As we know that in the today's economy, all over the world, not only ASEAN, 30% of the food is waste. Car seat unused 90% of the time. Office is used only 60 and until 65% of the time. That's why now the trend also how to do the co-working space, sharing the office. This is one of the optimize the space of the office. And then 86% of the plastic packaging is not recycled. So this is also a challenge for the company, consumer goods company, to recycle their packaging. Some of company in, as I know, like Unilever already done a lot of research to do this. So the principles of the circular economy itself, there's three principles. The first is design out of the waste and pollution. This is also challenging, how to design out the waste. The second one is keep product and material in use. This is why we call it circular, because no product become waste. The third one is regenerate natural system. This is also related to the biological ecosystem. So what is circular economy? Circular economy is a new economic model. Actually, is the consideration is how the resource constraint and find a way how to reuse, recycle, and the product. But don't forget that circular economy is not only about recycle. So they are focusing on how to minimize the use of resources, reuse the product and services, how to make designs more sustainable, improving the system more efficiency, and minimize the externalities, especially the negative externalities. So this is the time for us related to this condition of COVID-19 to shifting from the linear economy to circular economy. Like I mentioned, the important issue is about how to rethinking about how we look at the unavailable waste become valuable waste. What is a valuable waste? From the solid waste composition, almost 80% of waste can be input from new product, but currently not optimized. Let's say the food waste should be composed and become energy. E-waste can be a new seed or others. Paper can be a new paper or craft. Plastic also become a new plastic and others. So we look at this data. So 80% can be optimized. What is a sustainable consumption? Related to the UN conference in the past, 1992. So there's a declaration called Reduction Unsustainable Pattern of Production and Consumption. Even this day, there's not exactly the definition of sustainable consumption, but the main discussion is about how we change the way we consume or consume less or together. So this is the discussion. Most of the research conducted into the design of circular economy focusing on the processes of the production and distribution. But of course, the process of consumption and the role of consumer can play in the important role and should be not have been neglected. So this is just the definition of the sustainable consumption. Sustainable consumption is the use of service or product which respond to the basic need and bring better quality of life. This is the keyword, quality of life, while minimizing the use of natural resources. So we have to minimize our natural resources because it's limited, and toxic material, as well as the emission of waste and pollutant over the life cycle. This is, we have to think life cycle thinking about the product and services. So we are thinking about the next generation and the future generation. This is from the UNEP. So in SDGs itself, in the goals number 12, responsible consumption and production, like I mentioned, many discuss about the production side, but also we have to thinking from the consumer side. This is a combination between the consumption and production. To more easy to look at this concept, we go to the next slide. This is the sustainable consumption and production should be involved. This is several issues. The first is about design, how the design for sustainability. About the production, how to do the cleaner production and resource efficiency. When we transporting the product, how we use the sustainable transport, how we do the eco-labeling or certification for our product. And related to the procurement, there should be a sustainable procurement. And also come to the marketing, we have to use the sustainable marketing. And as a consumers, we have to change our behavior to be more sustainable lifestyle, And this is the last one related to the sustainable resource waste management and resource management. So this is a big picture of the sustainable consumption and production. So the key is moving from a linear economy, but again, this is a long process because circular economy is a new concept, especially in ASEAN itself. If I'm not mistaken, from 10 ASEAN countries, Singapore quite advanced on this, but the rest of the countries still struggling with the waste management system and infrastructure, because should be a holistic approach from the production side and also from the consumer side. So all stakeholders, not only government, also private sector should be involved, as well as the household or the consumers. So from the consumer side, what we can do is, again, like I mentioned in the previous slide, we have to change our consumer behavior, the way we consume. Looks like the COVID-19 also give us a reflection that now we have to stop or at least reduce our consumption. It's also good for us to reflect for these several months. We are not too much on traveling. We are not too much on eating outside. So this is part of the time for reflect how this concept become reality. So this is all my presentation. I'm happy to continue with the discussion. Thank you so much, Mr. Mahmudi. Look forward for the discussion. Thank you. Yeah, this is my last slide. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Arisman, for your share about the circular economy advantage to the environment. I mean, I quote from your presentation. It's quite interesting to reflect the consumptions of people, in the COVID-19 situations. I think for those who are fasting at the moment, I mean, some countries in ASEAN, like in Brunei, Malaysia, Indonesia, and some people in Singapore, they are fasting. I think the time to reflect as well what we are going to eat and what we are going to consume during this period of time. I mean, we live in a new normals. All right, thank you very much, Dr. Arisman. Now I'm going to give a floor to our speakers from Norway. So Dr. Marianne Karlsson. Good morning, Dr. Marianne Karlsson. I think still in the morning, right? In Oslo, in Norway. So I would like to introduce you about your profile a little bit. So Dr. Marianne Karlsson currently works at the Norwegian Institute for Water Research as a research scientist. She holds a PhD in Environment and Development Studies. She has worked extensively on such as issues on climate change and adaptations, societies and environment, natural resource management, and geography. So without further ado, so I would like to give a floor to Dr. Marianne to present her topics.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mahmudi, and good afternoon to the ASEAN region. And here in Oslo, it's indeed good morning. And this is my first ASEAN event, and I'm very happy to take part of this webinar. So thank you so much for inviting me. And I think it's also a reflection that COVID-19, it doesn't recognize borders, and it forces new ways of working, such as working from home, having Zoom meetings all across the world. So within this tragedy, it might be a window of opportunity to rethink current unsustainable development practices and to come up with new, more sustainable ones. And as you mentioned, I work for the Norwegian Institute for Water Research, NIVA, and NIVA turned 60 last year and is Norway's leading environmental research institute related to the use and protection of water resources. And NIVA has over the last 10 years worked with plastic issues, preventing plastic pollution and marine plastic littering. And for Norway as a country, this is also one of its top environmental priorities, nationally and globally. And I'm not sure if my presentation is showing. Yeah. Yes. So my talk will focus a bit on extended producer responsibility, which is suggested as one way forward to a circular economy. And I will also provide some examples on how Norway is dealing with this. But first, I will briefly introduce the reason for my collaboration with Arisman and the ASEAN Secretariat. And that's the project ASEAN Norwegian Capacity Building Project for Reducing Plastic Pollution, ASEANO. Maybe next slide. Yes. So in my case, and for many others, it has enabled connections and collaborations between the ASEAN region and Norway. And this is a capacity building project with two, it will be coming more case studies, but currently it's in the Citarum Bandung area in Indonesia and Cavite City Imus River area in the Philippines. And it will monitor how much macroplastic that rivers carries to the ocean. There's not so much data on that as of yet. It will also analyze the effectiveness of existing policies, as well as looking into how households and consumers behave and what small enterprises and industries can do to develop production measures. And I think this is a great opportunity for Norwegian and ASEAN efforts to reduce plastic pollution. And one of the approaches promoted to transition to a circular economy in Europe, as well as in the ASEAN region, is this concept extended producer responsibility. It's seen as a vital part of the picture to ensure that plastics and its value stays in the economy and gets out to the environment, and also to support a transition to a sustainable circular economy. And this is to transform the linear economy that Arisman talked about, take resources, make something out of the resources and dispose them into a circular economy where waste is seen as a raw material that can be made to be valuable again. And this approach, EPR, involves a shift in responsibility from governments and municipality, those who typically manage waste, to the entities that make and market products that are destined to become waste. And the reasoning is that producers should kind of make their projects, to design projects that last longer and are more easily treated after use. And most of the EU member states and Norway has introduced such systems for plastic packaging, but the ways of how it's implemented has been varied. So in this system, it's important to have a producer responsibility organization, for example, a industry level organization that deals with packaging that can kind of set up standards and maintain the system. And if you go to the next slide. And the implementation of this kind of policy, that means that the polluter pays principle. Polluters are seen as responsible for environmental impacts of the projects. And if producers are responsible and legally liable, they will try to minimize the true costs of environmental costs of the products. And plastics is one of these areas that's seen as a priority for the circular economy in the EU, and especially plastic packaging. And plastic packaging in relation to these kind of schemes can be considerations about overpackaging, using several layers of plastics in the same packaging, how municipalities and government authorities might procure materials to avoid perhaps single-use plastics, awareness-raising campaigns, and also financial instruments that can reduce packaging or replace single-use plastics to prevent waste. Yeah, if we go to the next slide. In this scheme, there's a range of different stakeholders involved, both at the government level. They have to have someone setting up guidelines and standards, and you have to have the producers engaged, and also the ones that manage brands. And some waste management agency that carries out the actual collection, transportation, and disposal of waste on behalf of the consumers, recyclers, processors of the materials that can be produced, waste collectors. This can be both urban local bodies, or it could be more informal waste pickers or waste workers. So there's a range of different stakeholders that have a role. If you go to the next one. But even for conscious citizens, plastic is almost unavoidable, and living plastic free requires a lot of effort and time that can only be afforded by very few. And as already been mentioned, plastics come in different forms and are produced for different purposes. And some of its uses are absolutely necessary. Maybe we've seen this particularly during this crisis in medical use and so forth. Single-use plastics are vital to combat COVID-19 and other medical issues. But most single-use plastics are perhaps not, and it will be interesting to see after this crisis if, for example, takeaway, when people do more of their shopping online and when people take away perhaps more food, if this has changed. So if we look at the, I'm not really done. So waste generation is also associated with wealth levels or GDP levels, as Arisman said. So Europe and northern countries are doing much worse per person in terms of waste generated than almost all the ASEAN countries. So Europe and Norway has big challenges with generation. And I will just briefly go into how Norway is dealing with this issue now. If you go to the next. Next slide, yeah. So I think in Norway, as in many other places of the world, plastic pollution has risen as a very visible and a very emerging environmental issues, helped by issues like this whale pictured here, stranded with 30 plastic bags inside it on the coast of Norway. It's really brought attention to the damage that plastic pollution and waste do to marine mammals and marine life. And so it's quite a highly visible environmental issue publicly. It's easy to understand, perhaps more easy to understand than other controversial issues, climate change or ocean acidification, for example. And this is an issue where most of the Norwegian actually support strong policies, but the current level of consumption remain high still. And as you see, there's almost 30 kilos of plastic waste generated per person in Norway. And I think that's probably way more than you would see in most ASEAN countries. Okay, next. So EPR in Norway has mainly consisted of voluntary initiative, but also some government mandated ones. For example, plastic packaging is part of a directive that it has to be manufactured and put on the market in a way that some of the material can be used or recycled. But it has so far been implemented on a voluntary basis, and this might change soon. And we also have a system where 95% of the Norwegians has the opportunity to segregate waste from household wastes. And one thinks that around a third of the household plastic waste is separated into, put forward into recycling. However, it's quite difficult to do something proper with this waste generated from households because it combines a lot of different types of plastics. And it's also very cheap now to produce new plastic products and difficult to find markets for different kinds of recycled plastics. So there's still challenges involved in this. And we have industry initiatives, plastic bag fees that contributes to a plastic foundation that in turn distributes money to projects that reduce plastic litter. That's supposed to now I think they have a call out for plastics and the COVID. So they support projects that are supposed to reduce plastic. And we have a very high rate of recycling of plastic bottles. The more companies recycle, the less tax they have to pay. And also each customer has to pay a deposit for each bottle. So this encourages thinking in citizens that this bottle needs to be returned. And we also had efforts of recycling fishing gear, because that's a problem, particularly in the northern region. Lost fishing gear that's actually of quite high plastic quality can be used and referred to other materials. Yes, next. And there's also city approaches, Oslo, where I'm currently in. It's joined as Plastic Smart City initiative. And Oslo is quite small compared to ASEAN standards, only 1 million people living in the bigger area. But they have quite taken goals to reduce single-use plastics, and by doing so, for example, by replacing plastics in their own activities, also having some activities cleaning marine litter and cooperating with research institutes and others to increase knowledge and awareness about this issue. And hopefully by 2022, all the unnecessary plastic articles in the municipality and the city in general should be phased out, but depends of course on if we can find better alternatives, if we can change how consumers behave, and if the current sorting and recycling can be improved. And I think these challenges might be shared with some of the cities and initiatives in ASEAN countries too, and I will be very happy to discuss this further. Thank you. That was my last slide.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Marianne, for your presentations. I think it's inspiring, to learn what Norway has done and the project that you are currently doing with CSEAS. And I believe, the people consumptions after pandemics will be very interested to learn whether, people are going back to use plastic, and how, plastic waste is going to be treated, after the pandemic. And thank you for that. And now we are going to another speakers, I think third speakers of the day. And after this, I will allow the participants to ask questions, and I'll be inform you on how to ask the questions after this last panelist. So our last speaker is Mrs. Kirana Agustina from World Resource Institute. So let me brief her about her profile a little bit. So Ms. Kirana worked as a policy specialist for Global Plastic Action Partnership, where she part of the global team and a partnership in the implementations of the GPAP strategic plan to support the Indonesian governments in achieving their target to reduce 70% of ocean plastic pollutions by 2025. She has a scientific background in marine science and just finished her postgraduate program in September 2019 with Chevening Scholarship at the University College London on environment, politics, and society. And she researched on ocean plastic politics of scales and Indonesian National Plan of Action. Okay, so without further ado, I would like to give a floor to Mrs. Kirana. Yeah, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mahmudi, and good afternoon to all ASEAN Foundation colleagues and our esteemed panelist speakers as well, Pa Arisman and Marian from Norwegian Institute. So I would like to share my presentation. Okay. So good afternoon to all. My name is Kirana Agustina, and you can call me Kiran. And as Mahmudi has mentioned, I'm currently working for the NPAP, the National Plastic Action Partnership. So I'm excited to share about the GPAP or NPAP and how this multi-stakeholder platform can support the implementation of Indonesia Ocean Policy. So why we have this platform is actually because in 2018, Ellen MacArthur, together with the World Economic Forum, created a report that said 8 million tons of plastic waste leakage to our ocean every year. And then if our behavior remain the same, by 2050 we will have more plastic than fish in the ocean. But then the Global Plastic Action Partnership believe that we can have the world without plastic waste, and it is possible. And how and then how it will achieve. So the World Economic Forum initiated GPAP, or it called Global Plastic Action Partnership, as an ambitious public-private platform to translate the commitment to address the plastic pollution into the tangible action through the circular economy as well. And the work that GPAP is doing is really to reduce plastic pollution and waste by transitioning into the circular economy. So start from replacing our habit on take, use, dispose model into the closed loop approach throughout the plastic life cycle itself. And then the impact that GPAP will do, which also will be implemented in the country, such as Indonesia, is by, first of all, is through the convening. So GPAP brings together all the policymakers, businesses, civil society, and all the advocates and entrepreneurs to align the common approach in addressing the plastic pollution and waste in the most effective and sustainable manner based on the local context in each country. And then, for instance, in Indonesia, and then in Ghana, and next in Vietnam, through GPAP, we created like insight or action roadmap. So the country, but based on a country itself. And then it can, at the global level, it can be an electronic knowledge toolkit that help the countries to replicate the same model as well. And then the last model from the convening and create roadmap. And then the last one is the matching or financing into the high potential solution with the innovators. So GPAP connecting the gap changing, like find the locally driven innovator to combat the plastic waste and pollution with the right resources, and then to move solution from the incubator to the rollout. And Indonesia has actually become the first national partner of GPAP, and it's called Indonesia National Plastic Action Partnership, or you can call NPAP, which is a closely collaboration between GPAP and the government of Indonesia. And how NPAP is doing in the country is similar, like I just mentioned before, at the global. So first, we convene and tap into the key partner from every sector, from government, from businesses or private sector, as well as the civil society that are doing initiative on the plastic as a key actor. And then we deliver the National Plastic Action Partnership, or we call the Multi-Stakeholder Action Plan. And it is just launched a few weeks ago. And then NPAP as well as also mandated to serve as an advisory role to the government of Indonesia. And as you can see on the left side, Indonesia, as you know, that as we all know, Indonesia has a target as the national target to reduce the 70% of plastic pollution in the ocean by 2025. And it was started in 2015, where we, as a country, became the second largest marine debris polluter, and then the government take it an action to create the action plan. And then the NPAP itself is, we realize, and both the government and at the global level realize that we need a multi-stakeholder approach and strategy to really functioning the national collaboration platform from the government into the another non-state actor. So at the NPAP, again, is a public-private collaboration, and we create a neutral platform to discuss among the expert, academic, consumer good companies, NGO, local government, and tourism industry, and to really to develop the solution with clear roles and responsibility for everyone who involved the national strategy. So it was in 2018 where GPAP established, and then in 2019, the NPAP was established. So it's just around 1 year. where Indonesia government through Kemenko Marves leading this platform. And we were convening 3 government ministers and then ministries, regional government, CEO, Indonesian market leader company, and all to launch this NPAP partnership. And after 1 year, through Systemic, we got a support to do the baseline study analysis. And as we can see in this slide, Indonesian is actually like record 6.8 million tons of plastic waste we generated, and then 61% is not collected, and only like 39% formal collection through formal and informal collection. And then the rest is, and then we can see how Indonesian behavior in manage their waste is mostly by burning their waste, which is create a problem so to our health and to our environment. And then the work or the report is actually based on, we divided or the Systemic create 4 archetypes based on mega, medium city, rural, and remote. And interestingly that although people in mega or medium city generate more waste, but the capacity to manage their waste is higher than people in rural or remote area. So we can see here on the right side, in the rural area and in the remote, they mostly they have mismanaged because there's a lack of infrastructure. And then so Systemic or the NPAP itself, under the report, we divide into 2 model or scenario. On the left side is the business as usual scenario, and on the right side is the system change scenario. So if we in Indonesia our behavior remain the same, the plastic pollution to the ocean will be double. But through the system change scenario, we hopefully can achieve the national target in reducing 70% of the plastic waste in the ocean by 2025, and also near zero pollution by 2040. So in 22nd of April, we just launched this multi-stakeholder action plan, and you can also check the full report on the Global Plastic website. Yeah. And actually, by doing the system change scenario, we can also anticipate more positive outcome. It's not only we can have avoid the 16 million tons of plastic waste in our ocean, but it also can create more than 150,000 jobs by 2025, and of course, to support the contribution to the climate change from the reducing the carbon emission, and as well the last benefit definitely to have a better health to our people and our environment as well. And from the report, we focus on 5 key action by, as maybe Arisman is already mentioned, and in the concept of the circular economy by reducing the avoidable plastic use, how we can prevent the consumption of unused plastic or single-use plastic, and how to substitute the plastic usage, and redesign it, the plastic product and packaging for high value recycling, and how we can double plastic waste collection, because as you have seen before that 61% of our waste in Indonesia is not well collected. So the goals is really to also double plastic waste collection and double current recycling capacity as well. And how we achieve this through NPAP. NPAP will create like not an army, but like implementer, because now after we launch the multi-stakeholder action plan, it comes to the implementation, and we have we are now currently setting up the 5 task force, as you can see here, under these 5 key action, from policy, investment and sustainable financing, innovation. And innovation is not only about technology, but also about new business model, about company behavior change or market, and then research as well. And then we also going to have task force on public awareness and behavior change, because this is also the big homework for Indonesia. And also the last is metrics to really monitor the achievement or the goals of the national target as well. And here the 5 our like structure at the global level, we work closely with, of course, GPAP and WEF, and also PACE. PACE is the platform for accelerating the circular economy. And then this country like UK, Canada, Coca-Cola, PepsiCo, Dow are the founding of the GPAP. And we are now having Ibu Tuti Hadiputranto as a new chairwoman for NPAP, which will align all the key actor or steering board members and task force as well under the NPAP list to do these 5 task force. So that's about GPAP and NPAP, and happy to have more discussion. And maybe to reiterate about this COVID-19 situation at the global level, we also already, and GPAP through NPAP as well, we've been discussed about how this unprecedented situation or like intervention like COVID can suspend maybe some of the target for reducing plastic, but actually there's also starting research that say the virus itself are more stay longer in the plastic, like for about 72 hours instead of like in the cardboard or in the paper. So it's as Pa Arisman also mentioned, I think this is also a good time to reflect to all of us how plastic or our consumption, not only to think about our health, but also in the long term of our planet health as well. Thank you so much. I'll give it back to Mahmudi.
Okay, thank you very much, Mbak Kirana, for your presentations. And I agree with you that behavior change is quite challenging. I mean, not only in Indonesia, but also in ASEAN. The whole regions are fighting and combating this plastics, waste, and it's a really challenging to our leaders as well. Okay, now we have completed the 3 speakers who spoke about the topics, COVID-19 and plastic, circular economy. So I would like to give a floor to ask a question. So there's a ground rule here on asking a question through online. So, and on the bottom of the right corner, there's a raised hand at the Zooms. But for those who are viewing from Facebook, so you can type your questions on the Facebook, and then we will read it to you to the speakers about your questions. And for those who would like to ask through the Zooms, you can ask through through typing it, or you can speak. So, but you have to raise your hand first at the top of right. I think on the top of the right below corner, I think you will find there's a raise hands there. Yeah. So I'm gonna open the floor for 2 to 3 questions first. So I haven't seen. Okay, let me check the questions from. Oh, there's one. Okay, there's one questions from actually from our directors, Dr. Yang Ming. So she asked the panels actually during the COVID-19. So any improvement to the environment? So I would like to give a floor to Dr. Arisman to respond to the question first. Meanwhile, I'll be storing other questions later. And afterwards, I'll give a floor to Dr. Marianne and Mbak Kirana. So yeah. Dr. Arisman.
Yes, yeah, thank you, Mahmudi. Yeah, of course, if we read many news in the past 2 months, it show a positive impact of the COVID-19 to the environment, especially for, let's say, for the ocean, for the forest, for the all the ecosystem. So in Europe, maybe in several rivers, they are more clean, including in Southeast Asia maybe. But the question is not only about the impact to the ecosystem, but after we return from the COVID, I mean, after the recovery or after the post-pandemic, we come back to again to do the same things. And if we don't change our behavior, I believe it's also become an issues again. So this is again to reflect because we change our behavior because we have to do it. Forced by the COVID. If we don't have a COVID-19, I'm not sure this condition happen. Yeah, people said now if you look at the skies, you can see the blue skies and there's less pollution because the manufacture or the production is stopped. But again, this is should be changed from the two sides, from the producer side, from the production, and also from the consumer side. So this is why I mentioned about the SCP, Sustainable Consumption of Production, because the key principle of this SCP actually is there's 4 key principles. The first is improving the quality of life without increasing environmental degradation. This is quite challenging because especially in Southeast Asia, we are in the stage of economic development. People still what we call it productive, and we want to do more production. So this is of course the impact to the environmental degradation. And how about the future generation, these resources, especially the natural resources? The second one is decoupling the economic growth from the environmental degradation by reducing material or energy. As we know that now many discussion about renewable energy and find the alternative materials. Yeah, still going on, but it's good. I mean, there's a transition to that area. And then the third one is applying the life cycle thinking. This is a new one. How we move from linear thinking to the circular thinking, the life cycle things. Because to close the loop, because the basic principle of circular economy is close the loop. So not from the cradle to grave, but from cradle to cradle. This is also still challenging for ASEAN countries, I think, because they're still using we call it technology 1.0, 2.0, 3.0, not 4.0. So this is not like in Europe. Maybe Marianne can share with us what Europe already, the status production in Europe now, more on the green production, green company. But I'm not sure in ASEAN. But the last one, yeah, of course, related to the materials and resource efficiency. This is again result of our overconsumption. So the easy one is we change our consumer behavior, because from the producers, of course, they want to maximize their production to get more profit. This is a typical of company. So yeah, there's a discussion about social enterprise, green company now. But yeah, basically the company should make a profit, so they have to produce as much as they want. So this is the first from me first, Mahmudi, my response. Thank you so much.
Okay, so yeah, any comments from Dr. Marianne?
I can comment from a European perspective, perhaps.
Yes.
And I also, of course, this when we're forced to be still and not do so much, it benefits the environment. We've seen that, but I think more so also, and that's quite a tough one now. I think a lot of countries in Europe and probably around the world are going into an economic recession. This will, of course, also impact how we consume. most of us will consume less with less disposable income. And this is, of course, a problem for the well-being and social welfare of countries, but it's also might be an opportunity to transition to a more sustainable economy. But I think in Europe, a lot of the economic activities now need to be supported by governments to be able to continue. And there's been a lot of discussion here on what demands can governments place on businesses in terms of renewable energy. Should they support businesses that are no longer, in a sense, not sustainable from an environmental perspective? So this could be, since the government and national spendings will have so much to say in restarting the economy, perhaps this could be a shift towards a more green and circular economy, and that's at least, I hope so. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much. Yeah, so Kirana, so would like to hear your opinion as well on the point.
Thank you, Mahmudi. Maybe just like to add the comments from Arisman and Marian. In the spirit of collaboration, I think I'm agree that all level has to take action from the government, from business and industry, as well as we are as a consumer or as a civil society. And I think if we want to see this kind of the opportunity as well, then we also need to really now start to work together with not only about thinking about the environment, also the health, our health. For instance, like because of this COVID-19 situation, to some extent, our single-use plastic may increase, but then we also need to think about the waste picker, for instance. Like if you see, like I've been sharing about the graph, how informal sector can contribute to the waste collection as well, like 10%, which is quite, I think 10% is quite significant, like, and under NPAP as well, like we work together with in Indonesia Waste Picker Association, and they have like 3.7 million people work as a waste picker. And then this COVID can also, how to say, like risk their health because of this our single-use plastic. So I think the government should take action to create the policy, and in the health system, maybe the hospital also have to create a proper waste management, and then the private and industry as well has to support the waste picker or other aspect. And then we as a consumer has to be more mindful of our consumption, to not only about our health, but also people health and our environment in Indonesia as well. So yeah, maybe I just would like to add that point.
Okay, thank you very much, Kirana. So I think if I scroll down the questions, there are lots of questions already here. So I'm gonna read through the questions for each speakers. So some questions are addressing to specific speakers. So first questions from Barakallah at Robin W, I think World Resource Institute. So to Mr. Arisman, to Pak Arisman. So are there any safeguards in the circular economy approach that ensure the value add falls in the hands of local communities, first production line, as they assume that they are the most impacted with these new COVID situations? Would it be great if circular economy can also support them in recovering from COVID situations? I think Dr. Arisman, that is the question for you. And then the second question for Dr. Marianne. Any financial as well as non-financial incentive in EPR to support impacted coastal communities? How to determine the beneficiaries of EPR mechanisms? And then for Ms. Kirana, will the NPAP intervene on the subnationals and local levels, especially under public awareness and behavior change task force? So I think I'm gonna let Dr. Arisman to respond to the first question first. Did you get the questions that I just read, Dr. Arisman?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So perhaps you can answer, and then I'll do another questions after this. Yeah.
Okay, I would like to respond for the question from Barakala. Are there any safeguard in the CE approach to ensure the value add in the hands of local communities or the first production line, which is they are more impacted. Actually, this concept is, like I mentioned, this is a new concept, more on the concept of circular economy, focus on how to try to restorative or regenerative by design, how to keep the product, component, material at the highest utility and the value change. So they try to extension of the activities through the value chain, such repairing, reusing, repurposing. But for the first production line, of course, again, this is related to the COVID-19 because there's a two aspect from the, we call it the technical aspect and technical cycles and the biological cycle. So yeah, to be honest, I don't know if there is a safeguard in this economic approach to ensure the value add, but looks like this concept try to be more, we call it more green, more environmental friendly. But in the other side, of course, this is also related to the cost of production and related to the innovation. So maybe only big company can do this one. That's why many initiatives now still in the big company like Adidas, Unilever, Nestle. But how about the SME? How about the micro enterprise? Yeah, of course, this is still for the discussion for this. I think for the response for Barakala, I think that's from my side. Okay. Thank you, Mahmudi.
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah, thank you very much, Dr. Arisman. So I would like to have Dr. Marianne to answer questions on any financial as well as non-financial incentive in EPR to support impacted coastal communities. How to determine the beneficiaries of EPR mechanisms? Are to you to understand the question?
I hope so. If
Okay.
we buy coastal, thank you. If by impacted coastal communities, are we thinking about the communities impacted by plastic pollution? That's how I would interpret the question. And I'm not sure if there's any direct financial or non-financial initiatives in the EPR as a concept that would be channeled directly to coastal communities. However, I know of, for example, these initiatives, Fishing for Litter, where you, for example, engage fishermen in different countries to participate and clean up oceans and pick up plastic waste, and the parts of the plastic waste that can be recycled is then remunerated to them. But I think this is a very important question, and as of now, I think EPR tends to be more geared towards producers and the government levels, and the benefits to communities or smaller level enterprises, as Arisman mentioned, are not always thought out, and this needs to be considered carefully to make a circular economy more inclusive and not to either impact livelihoods or to take away the livelihood basis for example, waste pickers by introducing schemes that support producers or others instead. And thank you so much.
Okay. Yeah, thank you very much. So by Kirana, did you answer the questions for you? I think you got the questions, right?
This one from Mas Barakala, yeah? Will the
impact intervene? Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much, Mas Bara, for the question. And to answer this, yes, we will, because as we all agree that the local government has a powerful role in really manage the waste in the local area. And NPAP is actually already engaged with several local leaders such as Ibu Risma in Surabaya and as well as Mayor of Denpasar in Bali. And we believe that both those local champion or those local leadership are very important in this waste management. So, and then for instance, because now NPAP already start the implementation phase, and we have the 5 task force, and some co-chairs are also already propose some local government authorities to join the task force. So of course we will and then we'll note it about the behavior change. I think it's also important to have the local level in the task force. Thank you so much, Mas Bara, for both the question and suggestions. So
there's another question actually for you, Mrs. Kirana. What is the organization's qualifications to be able to join member of NPAP? And what is the benefit to be included as a member? This is a question from Lina from Indonesia, just to echo from the previous questions.
Okay, so we're happy to involve any organization or innovator like social entrepreneur as well that really focus on the same issue, ocean plastic pollution, and related to that. You can directly email to me to kirana.agustina@wri.org, and as a member, we will update and inform any opportunities that will come related to NPAP, through GPAP or World Economic Forum, because currently we also like have several projects coming up related to innovators and so on. That's for the members. But for the task force, because in the task force, we currently only plan to have 10 to 20 members in each task force. So you can send the interest, and then we will also send you the commitment letter, and then you can fill it, and we will share to the co-chair, so the co-chair will decide for the task force. But for the members, the members will get mostly updated, but for the task force, they will become part of driving the change, because they will the one who really implementing the action plan into real action. Yeah, thank you, Mas.
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah, I have questions for the speakers. I think our audience is quite, having a lot of motivations to ask questions about the circular economy. So another questions that we copied from Facebook Live. So there's a questions from Michelle Phoenix, I think Michelle Phoenix from FB. Even in the early stage of the pandemic, the fragility of our current global supply chains became apparent. Think availability of medical equipment. In what ways may we effectively to consider translating circular economy into a new normal? How many circular economy contribute to the recovery from economic ramifications of the pandemic? Yeah, in what ways may we effectively consider translating circular economy into a new normal? And how may circular economy contribute to the recovery from economic ramifications of the pandemic? These are questions from Michelle Phoenix about pandemics, and I think who would like to respond to the question first? Dr. Marianne, you would like to respond first?
Yeah, I think for some reasons, this fragility of the global supply chains, that in itself maybe, although I'm not an expert on this, maybe an incentive also to use the resources that we have in hand in our countries and regions more wisely, because we now seen that some of the global links that we've taken for granted are fragile, and as soon as an event like this happens, they might not guarantee our continued supply. So I think we will probably see a resurgence in maybe a more regional or national focus on how we use resources, and try to incorporate some of the resources that we have in hand into our production chains. And that might be in contrast to more cooperation. Unfortunately, we've seen that, at least in Europe, that each country has kind of wanted to tackle this crisis on its own. But hopefully we can return to a more global cooperation. But I think it forces us to rethink what we have at hand in our own countries and how we can use that wisely. So that in itself might contribute to a more circular economy, and also provide a restart of the economic, a new economic way, at least here in Europe. Thank you so much for the question.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Marian. I think Dr. Arisman, you would like to respond to the questions?
Yeah, I agree with the Marian that of course the fragility. This is not only about circular economy. Again, this is I mentioned this is also related to the sustainable consumption and production. So circular economy is no even is a new concept, but still again this pandemic can be the time for us to reflect, like I mentioned. But yeah, of course, there's a process to be how to make it this concept more effective and efficient. Because to be honest, like in the several sectors, like say the health sectors, it's hard to find the alternative for in the surgery, in the medical equipment, if without plastic. This is one of the samples. So this is should be more research and innovation, I think. Yeah, I think that's all, Mahmudi. Just to add.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, Kirana, do you have a good response?
We just to give additional thoughts a little bit.
Okay.
Again, I think about the COVID-19 it is important that the health system, our health system, has a proper waste management, especially in every hospital, for instance. And I think the government also already start doing it. I know that from Kemenkomarves or from other government ministries are also already think how to properly manage the waste from the health system after, especially during this COVID-19. And as we know, for instance, from LIPI, our research science institution, they are also just spread the survey how this during this COVID-19 about the waste in the waste the rate whether it's increased or not. And then I heard from the LIPI colleague that in Pantai Indah Kapuk, in the fishermen is actually now they said the fishermen said the waste of our consumption are getting less, but from the health, like from the masker and medical waste are increased. I think this is also interesting to see how the fishermen can also be part of the citizen science or be involved in this COVID-19 work. And agree with what Pak Arisman mentioned. We need more innovator. For instance, like zero, if during the last digital launch in NPAP, we had a speaker from Zero Waste Living Lab, which they provide support to startup in Indonesia. And Kecipir is one of the groceries, and then during this COVID, their income is increased four times. So maybe we need more innovator that to see how this challenge can become the opportunity to all of us. Because yeah, even before this COVID, to tackle this plastic pollution is already ambitious target, and even with this unprecedented moments, it's even more difficult, and we need more people to work together to solve this. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Kirana. So I think there's another question for you, but then I think the persons could ask your questions directly. I think how to join a member as impact organizations. Perhaps the questions can be directed to your email a bit later. But there's another question from Celestine's Joy. I think this person is from Philippines. I think I think the questions for the three speakers. What is the indicator then? What is an indicator then a country or a place to have a successfully shifted to a circular economy realistically? How long it will take? Has there been any case study about it? If yes, please tell what happened. You can read the question through the column line as well. Yeah. So yeah.
Yeah,
I think okay. Yeah, Pak Arisman, you would like to respond first. Yeah.
What are the indicator, especially in ASEAN countries, to transform to circular economy? There's a research by Area. Area is ASEAN Research Institute based in Jakarta. They try to do research on the stages, or they call it the maturity of the CE, circular economy. So I have the data on that. They try to make a ranking, like I mentioned in the beginning, Singapore in the first rank, and then followed by Malaysia, Thailand, Indonesia, and Philippines. So they divided by some criteria or indicator, like the readiness of the industry, the government regulation or policy support, and others. I forget. But my point is, there's a research on that. So I can share with you if you want, please.
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah, so is there any other response from the speakers on these questions?
I agree with Arisman, and maybe I could just add that it's possibly also how much of the materials that can be recovered and recycled. That's an indicator of how far into a circular economy we may be. And it might also be difficult to do this on a country basis because a lot of the economies are so intertwined. So perhaps a regional or approach is even more appropriate. That was just my thoughts. Thank you for the question.
Yeah. Okay, so I think I'm gonna scroll from the bottom. I think there are more questions from the bottom. So I'll just, since we have around 14 minutes more to go. So another question, if I scroll down from the bottom, so, okay, so questions from Dina. I think following up Tri Puji's Wahyuni's questions, I think, okay, how the developing countries manage the increasing medical waste due to COVID-19? Yeah, is there any speakers you would like to respond?
I think Marian will share because from developed countries.
Marian will
okay, Marian.
Thank you for that question. Okay. It's very relevant, but I don't know. I think they manage the medical waste as they have been before, as like a hazardous waste, probably. So I'm doubtful that a lot of it will be able to be recycled and used in any other way. Probably a more taken care of or incinerated or in waste that doesn't that prevents further contamination. That's but I don't really know, to be honest. So it'll be interesting to see after all this how different countries with perhaps different pressures on their medical systems and use of medical things have dealt with this. So that's the best I can say. Sorry. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, thank you very much for your response. I think another question from Delmali Hajal. So most of the relief goods that the government is distributing is packed with plastic. And how can we encourage the government to make the public aware that using plastic is not quite good? I think this is about, behavior change again, Yeah, so any speakers would like to respond? Perhaps Mbak Kirana, since you are working in the NPAD Secretariat, somehow it's part of the government as well. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. So under NPAD, actually, we will setting up this behavior change task force very soon after financing and innovation task force. And yeah, definitely there will be part of the discussion as well. We are not the co-chairs actually coming from NGO, ASWI, Alliance Zero Waste Indonesia, which has 10 NGOs member under ASWI, as well as Ministry of Education and Culture and Nahdlatul Ulama as well. So we will, I cannot really answer that right now, but the clear action will be during the discussion with the co-chair, especially after all the member will come. But it will definitely part of it. Yeah, the behavior change is really the main, the big homework for Indonesia.
Yeah. So yeah, maybe for Arisman, you would like to say something on this?
No, it's already clear by Kirana because she's in charge for the public awareness of plastic with this initiative. Yeah. I think many initiatives in the local, but how to synergize all the initiative like mentioned by Kirana. to make more impact, because all the doing the initiative separately. So if together using the multi-stakeholder framework, I think it's more good for all countries to do the campaign for the public awareness of less plastic, maybe.
Yeah, I think similar questions from FB as well. So from, I think, Min Miat Swan, I think somebody from Myanmar asked a question: do the COVID-19 think people so more plastic bags are used for, for parcels and packaging for food delivery? What I would like to know is that is there any way to control the use of plastic bags during the COVID-19? I think that somehow it's related to the previous questions. Yeah, any speakers would like to respond to this?
Yeah, for the plastic bag, I think not because of the COVID-19, but there's a several initiative in many countries. There's a plastic bag charge, plastic bag tax, plastic bag, many issues, many tax charge. But this is one of the incentive, because you should put incentive to people to change their behavior. It's incentive or disincentive. My point is people will change of the plastic consumption. Like Indonesia case, in the retail, like Alfamart, if you don't bring your own bag, so you have to buy the recycle bag. It's more expensive, so it will be change your behavior to bring your own bag. Maybe that's the simple one.
Yeah, perhaps we would like to learn, the best practice from Norway. I think, yeah, Marianne, perhaps you would like to share. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure
Plastic
we
bag.
have the best practice, but I would just like to share too. I'm actually from Sweden, and right there in March we had a huge increase in the price of plastic bag. So if you buy 3 bags, for example, that's close to $2. So it makes and it's not something that you forget. So I will be interested to see how this will pan out. But I think also from the Norwegian experience, the plastic bag fee goes in, as I mentioned, to fund other projects that focuses on plastic pollution to reduce it. And that might be something that consumers can, if they buy a bag, they can also be quite confident that the money is used wisely rather than just a tax. I think that could be an incentive. And for the takeaway and for the deliveries, I think we also need to put more pressure on those who deliver and those who provide the food stuff to come up with better alternatives, because it's quite difficult sometimes as a consumer to make wise choices when the plastic is always the easiest option and the one that's most readily provided. Yeah. So I think there's still challenges here in Europe and Norway as well, especially now with the food delivery. It's if you buy takeout food, it always comes in plastics, and it's very difficult to avoid it actually. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So yeah, but Kirana, you would like to say something on this?
Just a little bit, maybe I agree with both of Arisman and Marian. And there's also, but for me, as an individual, the one that control is definitely ourselves. Like, especially as we all know, but maybe not. This narrative is not really mainstreaming yet. But some research say that the virus during this COVID especially will stick longer, like 72 hours in plastic or shiny material instead of cardboard. But this is not something that really mainstreaming to the public. And especially I think in some countries, especially like in the US, some area suspend their ban single-use plastic. And so for me, for myself, I start to control for myself. For instance, if I go to groceries, I always bring my reusable bag so I can clean it up again. And then I try to buy from groceries in like a cheaper that provide or like sayur box that give through like card box instead of plastic. So yeah, maybe trying a little bit as much as we can to be more mindful, while we need more definitely innovator incentive and some of the policy took in place as well. But yeah, we need to control ourselves as well, I guess. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Now we have 5 more minutes, I think, to close these sessions. I think for those who would like to ask questions, I think our colleague will also, you can also address a question through our FB. Then we will just put forward the questions to our speakers today. And this, I think this session is also recorded in Zooms and also in our Facebook. And we will make it available to audience, after these sessions, and we will make it available as well to YouTube. And for those, I believe that some of the participants, some of the audience also are youth from ASEAN who would like to participate the Model ASEAN meeting that ASEAN Foundations will be, organizing, in Hanoi, Vietnam later this year. So this, I think. CSEAS also will be part of these programs in the futures, and we believe we will work together on these topics, plastic trade and circular economy during the AFMAM in Hanoi. So yeah, before we close the session, so I would like to ask each panelist to provide a closing statement, actually, about this topic today. So I would like to, maybe I'll give it a floor to Arisman first.
Yeah, actually there is a question from about social enterprise, if I'm not mistaken, from the Executive Director of ASEAN Foundation. I would like to respond a little bit.
You would like to respond to that?
Yeah, I mentioned a social enterprise, which is now there's a new trend of moving from to be a social enterprise. What is social enterprise? Yeah, there's many definition on that, but actually is how to make the equilibrium between the economic motive and the social motive. I just give you a sample in Indonesia. There's many initiatives, especially for the startup. They try to build a new enterprise by mention they're a social enterprise. So they start with the social motive, social objective. Let's say for the waste, how to make the waste more reusable or recyclable, or maybe the other topic about more material friendly and others. So my point is, in the social enterprise is a new concept as well. So this is a new approach, because not only for the profit or economic motive, but how to make the social impact more. So this is quite new. Even the many NGOs now are transforming to social enterprise, because most of the NGOs doing this before, but in terms of sustainability, because enterprise also talking about the more sustainable in terms of finance. So this is sustainable. So my closing remark, the concept of sustainability is about the combination between the social, economy, and environment should be put in the practice, not in the concept, because I believe UN and World Bank and many big institutions already have a big concept, but still when come to the practical, like mentioned by sustainable consumption, we consume less or we change our consume behavior. So this is still debate. So again, I agree with Kirana. Let's start with ourselves. We change our self behavior. Thank you.
So thank you very much, Arisman. Yeah, so now I would like to have a closing statement from Marianne.
Less plastic consumption. Yeah. Less plastic consumption.
Thank you. It's very difficult to disagree with that. I also think it's important to continue to collaborate on this issue and to learn from each other. That Norway has a lot to learn and Europe has a lot to learn from the initiatives in the ASEAN countries, and also the initiatives that Kirana mentioned, and how individuals or communities are tackling this problem, how one on a small scale might be able to transfer to a more circular economy. And to learn from that perhaps is a good start for upscaling and turning bigger regional areas and national economies into a more sustainable direction. So I hope that we can continue collaborating and learning from best practices and approaches to deal with plastics and to reduce plastic consumption. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, yeah, Marianne. So I would like to give the floor to Kirana to give a closing statement.
Thank you, Mas Mudi. So I think we, as an individual, must aware that we are all change maker. We need to find out our role between ourselves, how we can do as an individual, what we can do in the professional level in our work. Either it's a filmmaker, teacher, businesses, everyone has a role to play in terms of this issue. And then as a global citizen, because part of us is also part of the global, and I hope that we can also understand that role as well. Yeah, like either to choose our leader to be the one that has a more sustainable thinking, and yeah, so on and so forth. Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much. So finally, we come to the end of our discussions, and I would like to say thank you to the panelists for the very inspiring sessions, of today's discussions. At last, we would like to say thank you to all the attendees and who make their time to participate these discussions today. And I hope you all stay safe and and healthy wherever you are. So yeah, so don't forget to wash your hands. So and I hope everyone are healthy. And thank you very much. And I look forward to seeing everyone in the next discussions. Yeah. Bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you, Arisman, Marian, Mas Mudi.
Thank you.